Hello, and welcome back to the Matriarchy with Kath and Lisa. Hope you are all doing very well today. Hope that 2026 is bringing you some good things. We know it's been an interesting year already, but hopefully, personally, your life is going well, and we are so happy to be here today, and we have a very special guest with some information that I think everybody needs to hear. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it to Kath to introduce our guest and what we're going to be talking about today.
Thanks, Lisa, and happy to be back here with I think our second episode of the year. So I hope everyone's having it's been a bit of a rough start, but glad to be doing what we're doing. I'm really looking forward to this episode too. It's going to be on USAID, and that was one of the issues I really wanted to dig into when Lisa and I, first came up with the idea of doing this, not only the podcast, but our business, to understand the work that goes into it. So anyway, I am really delighted to introduce Tara Reichenbach today. Tara is an international development professional who has spent her entire career working alongside U.S. government partners, including USAID, to turn policy into practice. She started her career working for NGOs that implemented USAID contracts and then transitioned to USAID as a Foreign Service officer focused on health programs and serving in Rwanda, Uganda, and Washington, D.C. While overseas, she focused on how to make health programs sustainable by working with local organizations and local governments. When she decided to step away from the FSO life, Tara continued her sustainability work as a senior technical advisor at the Department of State's Office of the Global AIDS Coordinator, which is funded by USAID, the CDC, DoD, and others to implement the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief. Tara was in this role when the foreign assistance was paused, programs cut, and USAID was dismantled. Welcome, Tara.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. This is such an important topic.
And that is quite a bio.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
You've seen a lot. You've been around the world. I guess just to start off, have you always been drawn into service? And I guess even digging a little further back, like who were the important role models in your life, particularly women? And, we're always interested here too in like how you found your voice. Were you always able to use it, or was that something you developed over time? And I get the sense that these are probably all interconnected questions. So that's why I'm hitting you 1, 2, 3 all at once.
Yeah, they definitely are. It's interesting. When I left undergrad, my undergrad degree is in history and French literature. And I thought I was going to be a history professor. I had this envisionment of walking a campus and writing books and all of that academic piece. And about 2 weeks after I graduated, I ended up having an opportunity to go to Jamaica to teach for a few weeks. It was kind of pushed by my mother, who had volunteered to chaperone. And so she was trying to coax me into it. And it changed my life. It changed the course of what I decided to do. Through that experience, I worked in schools that were built in the slums. One was actually built out of trash in the community that was living in the city dump and had built their homes out of the trash. And so seeing that and seeing that diseases like leprosy are still out there really impacted what I wanted to do, and realized that, well, teaching is a wonderful and amazing goal, that wasn't where I wanted to put my energy. Now, what was interesting was because I hadn't done any internships, I hadn't kind of prepped myself for a career in development, I really had to start from scratch. And so I found non-paid internships. I found all of those avenues to start getting into organizations that were doing this work.
Mm.
And I was really fortunate that my mother and my parents were supportive of this and let me live with them and really kind of helped me on that journey. Um, and that led me to where I am today. And I've had an amazing career and I hope to continue to, but it really has focused on having a positive impact on the global community. I think that's really important, and it's something that I like to instill in my children and those around me who will ever listen. But the things that I've seen and the people I've interacted with have continued to have such an impact on my life that it's hard to to express it. But I have a
Yeah.
huge passion for this, and I think I've met some incredible women along the way that have helped me find my voice. Um, I think of some of my first supervisors who, my background is in health. I ended up getting 2 master's degrees, one in community and global health, and the other in conflict analysis and resolution. And because global health tends to be very female dominated,
Mm.
I've had the great fortune of working with some amazing women who've helped me find my voice and helped me shape who I want to be in the workplace and as a human in the world. And I am incredibly lucky to have had that experience and know that not everybody has had that experience. And so I do strive to share that as much as possible.
The idea that we were born here, not to say that this is a perfect place by any means, but it's really just by luck, right? And I think that's the thing that traveling, like what you experience, I think for me, because I've also done some traveling into areas, not to the level that you did. I mean, I just certainly don't want to give you that idea, but I had a similar experience at one point in Egypt when I was just like, oh, like, oh, wow, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why it's so important to travel, first of all, and to travel off the beaten path a little bit.
Yeah.
And then you realize that we were just, it's by accident that we were given this great fortune to be in so far a relatively stable environment. And for you to take it to that next level of wanting to improve the world, I have great admiration for you for doing that. So thank you so much.
And I think you're exactly right. The people that, I've worked with and worked for, the patients that I've seen in clinics, it is all luck of where they were born and the situation in which they were born into. And that's one of the incredible things about USAID and the work
Mm.
that they did is that it was holistic. If you looked at the entire portfolio that USAID encompassed, it encompassed everything from education, democracy and governance, environmental protection, and health.
Mm.
And so those are all fundamental building blocks for improving somebody's situation at birth.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
that is something that you don't get in most places because that's just not how it's funded.
Mm.
And so
Mm.
it's really important to look at that really big picture of what's going on in somebody's life and what can positively impact it. And I think that's one of the things, unfortunately, that we won't be seeing if, this dismantlement stays the way it is being able to improve
Mhm.
how people and where people are born because it's
Yeah.
not their fault.
Right.
I'd like to back up a little bit and give like a bit of an
Sure.
overview of
Mm.
and it's USAID, not USAID, or are they interchangeable? And it stands for U.S. Agency of International Development. Is that right?
The United States Agency for International Development.
Okay.
Technically, it's USAID,
Oh,
but a lot of
okay.
people will say
Mm.
USAID. And it's interesting, just to not get us too far off track, but because USAID was founded by congressional decree, there's a lot of interest in making sure that people overseas understand where the support is coming from, where the aid is coming from. So the entire USAID branding is governed by congressional documents. And so everything from how your email signatures are signed, how our implementing partners were to use the USAID logo. See, even I say USAID, but it's all actually governed by legislation because it's so important to understand that this is from the American people that they wanted to make sure that that was globally understood. So just a little history on that.
Yeah, it's interesting.
That's so interesting. And it falls under the, if I'm getting this correct, it falls under the umbrella of the State Department. Is that correct? So USA.
USAID?
Go ahead.
USAID?
Yeah. USAID. When you think of like the State Department, you think of diplomacy, you think of foreign service officers, you think of visas and embassies. But USAID workers are foreign service officers. They're delivering soft diplomacy around the world, and we'll kind of get into like the national security part of this.
So it's an interesting structure that was always kind of a little bit of contention between Department of State and USAID, is that USAID is a separate entity. However, the administrator has if you're looking at an org chart, has a dotted line to the Secretary of State. So there is a connection, but technically it is a separate entity that would cause some tension depending. So USAID does have foreign service officers. They are given authority from Congress to represent the United States government overseas, but they are a different cadre than what Department of State has. So over the course of its years, USAID used to even be in separate buildings overseas. They had a mission rather than an embassy. And as things became more streamlined and cost effective, USAID ended up sitting within most embassies, if not all embassies, for part of protection and security and to make things more efficient. So they still have their line of leadership within the embassy. So it's all related and we all work together and we all coordinate and try to leverage each other. But there are slightly different hiring and hierarchies involved. I do want to go back to something that you mentioned about the soft power, because that is one of the most important things that I think we're going to be missing, is that soft power. We often talked within USAID and within Department of State that there's 3 Ds. There's a triangle, the diplomacy, development, and defense. And that triangle isn't complete without one of those. And so we all have to work together to ensure security for the United States, to ensure prosperity for the United States, because all of the things that we're working towards are to benefit the United States and the American people, but also to improve the global. So that piece, USAID was the only place really providing that soft power. And it was created because of the ability to do the soft power. It was created back in 1961, shortly after the creation of Peace Corps. And it was to combat the Cold War in the Soviet Union. And the whole purpose was to use soft power to be able to build our allyship across the world. And so it has been very successful on that path. The amount of governments and actors that we've been able to partner with and really have some good relationships with are due to that soft power and the ability to work with their people and build those building blocks for their, citizens. And so that's going to be an interesting space to watch, and how some other countries may step in to kind of fill that gap, and that may not be the benefit for the United States.
Were they already, to some extent, some of our adversaries, have they already started doing that sort of thing in the past? Or okay.
The countries that I've worked in, I lived in East Africa, but I've worked across the continent and I've worked in Asia as well. You would see United States was involved and focused on a sustained approach. We wanted to make sure that the programs that we were implementing could be resilient and last after the money was gone. That takes time. That is not something that you see after 6 months. That's not something you see usually even after a year, which we can get into that in a little bit. But our adversaries see that, and would go for the quick wins. You need a road? We'll build you a road.
I see.
You need a new government building? We'll build you that building. And those were all really quick wins that were highly visible and were really kind of grabbed onto. And so now we're seeing an increase of those activities, but also stepping in some of the spaces that USAID is no longer doing. So you see a lot for like in health, providing of treatment and medicines and things like that. Those countries don't have the same rigor that we do and that we require for the medicines that we distribute. And so there may not be the same efficacy that we've been able to uphold to this point. And so we are seeing that, and it's concerning.
Like when we step out, Russia and China step in, basically.
Yes.
Yeah. And I've heard said too that the U.S. really won't be able to counter China without an effective USAID.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. China had been and has been working to oust USAID for a number of years, and has been very open about that. Like it's not hidden. And countries,
because
are aware.
It's so effective.
Yeah. I mean, what person wouldn't be excited that now they have a paved road to be able to get them from point A to point B? That's great. It's a win for the government. They can say we've improved the country. Look at this. But there's strings attached to it. Nothing comes for free. And so you see that if you look at some of the fine print in those agreements, there's allegiances that are expected and things like that aren't in our best interest for security and safety.
Yeah. Right. Whereas it takes time to build sustainability. It's the whole give a man a fish or teach a man to fish, right? It all takes time, and the benefits are these relationships. And aside from the soft diplomacy part, USAID keeps us safe in many ways.
Yes.
Like, we could talk about diseases from your experience as well. Like they stop diseases from reaching our borders, and so it keeps all Americans healthier. And I know you've done some work with AIDS programs. Is that right?
Yes.
You want to tell us about that?
Sure. If you look at USAID's involvement, I think one of the things that really impacted a lot of Americans is the most recent COVID. USAID was funded to be able to get the vaccines and the PPE, the personal protective equipment, out to countries as soon as we could. And they were highly effective at being able to get masks, to get oxygen, to get the vaccines once they were available out to countries, and then provide training to clinicians and to, the average person on how to use these things. That was because USAID already had a network. USAID already had relationships. They already knew how to get medicines in country and get them cleared, what the requirements were, and be able to move things expeditiously so that we could contain COVID as fast as we could. Could you imagine if we weren't able to do that, what devastation would have happened in other countries? It would have been horrific, beyond horrific as it already was. But there was also an interesting component, and I haven't seen any research on this. This is all anecdotal, but because of the programs that USAID does in health and behavior change and getting people to understand why it's important to care about your own health and how it impacts others, they were a lot more receptive. We found in many countries where USAID operates, the people were more receptive to automatically wear masks and to really follow through on the communal protection, because that was something that USAID had already been working on through their HIV programs, through their malaria programs, through their TB programs. And so the messaging was already out there, it was already accepted. And so it was a lot more effective. Then I know in the US, it took us a lot more time to really get into the masks and social distancing and things like that. And it was it was better received in countries that USAID had been working in. And I think, there's the long history of HIV. And this is where I have a huge personal concern. USAID has done an amazing job, and the Department of State has done an amazing job through PEPFAR at being able
Can you say what that stands for? Sorry.
The President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, which was started under President W. Bush. Get my Bushes correct. So it's been around since 2001 and has been instrumental in understanding the HIV virus and AIDS and being able to transition from having funerals every day to having babies born without HIV. And that has taken, a lot of research, a lot of understanding about how the virus works, and understanding how people work and what social networks look like, so that we can effectively reach the right audiences with the right messaging, so that we can get whatever treatments are needed out to the right places. I am concerned because we're now having a generation who didn't see their friends dying of AIDS, who didn't see funerals happening the way they did in the 90s. And so it doesn't have the same impact. Mentally, you're not really, there's treatment, I'll be fine, without understanding that if we don't have people putting research and understanding how drugs work, one of the things USAID was funding was a vaccine for HIV. There is no vaccine for HIV at the moment. There's treatment for if you get the virus or to prevent you from hopefully contracting the virus. But once you have it, there is no vaccines. And so we're getting a whole generation of people who don't understand the severity and are just kind of And without work of organizations like USAID and CDC was involved with this, we run the risk of having a massive outbreak of HIV and AIDS and not having the ability to get the drugs to the countries and the people who need them. It's amazing the rates in the United States and kind of how the perception in the United States, and that's going to impact as well our own national view of HIV and AIDS. But when you start getting into countries in sub-Saharan Africa and Asia, that's really challenging. And I'm really worried. I think the other thing, just to mention, you mentioned the safety of the American people. Yeah. And I think that ties to also a lot of the democracy and governance work that USAID did.
The what, sorry?
The democracy and governance work. So one of the things that USAID was focused on was ensuring that countries had democratic processes, that citizens knew how their government worked, knew their involvement and and empowering them to be part of that process. And so without having the ability to have free and clear elections in countries, we run the risk of having a lot more civil unrest in countries across the globe that could have been mitigated. And when you start getting a lot of civil unrest, it has a global impact. And depending on where that civil unrest could be, depends on the varying impacts for the United States citizen. But I think that's another space to be looking at is that democracy and governance work that was done. It was challenging because these things, as we mentioned earlier, aren't easily measured in short amounts of time. And we are trained in the United States to have immediate response, have immediate numbers. What did this do yesterday? And that isn't this type of programming. It's development. It takes time. If you want it to last, if you want it to be sustainable, if you want it to be resilient, you have to do the work. You have to do that foundational work to ensure that when you walk away, it's stuck. And so things like health and democracy work, it takes a long time. It takes, it can take up to 5 years to start seeing impacts of vaccines. Usually elections don't happen every year. The results of your democracy and governance work really show after an election. Well, that's going to take time. That's not tomorrow you get your results of this activity. And so that's really hard for people
Well,
to...
prevention is hard to measure.
Right. And I think that was one of the things that created or allowed some of the rumors that happened was because it takes time for these results. It made it easier for people to start saying that USAID was not effective, that USAID was not being transparent, when it's just that's the nature of the work. Right.
But the transparency also, that's a what do you call it? A dog whistle, right? Because aren't you required? The USAID is required, has all these like stringent transparency measures that for anyone to see, not unlike school districts where we have to post budgets and contracts and things right on the website, like the front page of the website. My understanding, it's pretty similar for USAID. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. I was one of the many things that I did at USAID was I was a contracting officer representative. So I was legally responsible for many agreements that USAID was implementing in the countries that I was in. And you are required by law to have all of that posted, public. Anybody could read. As long as, there were certain things that would be protected, by, data and PII and things like that. But for the most part, everything had to be available. And we would always get what's called FOIA, which is, a transparency, oversight, and accountability, where any American can put forward a request to see whatever information they're looking for. We would constantly get those, and you're bound within a certain time frame to provide all of that information. And we always did, and that was part of why we had stringent training and requirements for people to understand what documents needed to be kept, how they needed to be filed. So if they ever needed to be used for anything, they could be easily pulled up. And you could get serious trouble if you did not comply with that, to the point that you could lose your job if you don't. And so, I have other friends in other agencies, and when I tell them about the training I had to go through and the continuing learning credits I had to take to maintain that certification, they were always amazed. They were like, really? I only had to do like this kind of course. You had to take months? It's like, yes, I had to take months. And I have to continue to do all of this. They were very stringent. And part of it was because they didn't want to end up on the front page of the newspaper. No agency wants that, right? And so they were very aware that there was always a spotlight. And if they misstepped, they would most certainly get dinged for it.
So going back to a little bit of these, like USAID is really addressing foundational issues, right? Like poverty, health crises, and it helps with avoiding political instability, which leads to the U.S. being less likely to get involved in costly conflicts,
Mm-hmm.
military interventions, and that helps avoid youth radicalization
Yes.
in other countries and building like these diplomatic ties, this pro-American sentiment that it's relationships, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the and it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen just because you give someone something. It's working in a country so that it's self-sustaining after you leave, which doesn't require like U.S. presence there all the time. Like it, it boggles my mind how people can think that this is not important. It is dollar dollar for dollar. This is probably the best money we spend
Yeah.
for national security, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
like 0.5% of the total U.S. budget or something
Yeah,
like
I don't
that.
think it's ever made it above 1% of the budget.
So where is it right now? Has it been completely dismantled?
So right now, as of right now, it is all all activities have basically been any remaining activities, which is very, very little, which I think is less than 6%, if the last number I saw was correct, of the former activities have been transitioned to Department of State. Um, and I think they've relieved all contractors and full-time employees, barring, I think, like 11 or less, around 10%. So those few people that are remaining are being transitioned to Department of State, as I understand it. And one of the nuances of this, as I mentioned, USAID was started by Congress, which
Yeah.
means it can only be ended by a congressional
That was going to
act.
be my next question. What is the legality
Um,
of this?
and so it does still exist because Congress hasn't
Hmm.
signed off on completely ending it,
Okay.
but it does mean that really they're not able to function with, the few people that are left.
So, is it correct to say that Congress created a framework for this for
Mhm.
USAID,
Mhm.
um, and but the money comes from the executive branch? Is that the correct
So
way to?
USAID always fell under the executive branch.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so the money, they would put together their own budget requests, and we
Okay.
would have to report on our budget. We would answer directly to Congress on our budget. The budget that we would present directly to Congress. All of that was done directly. But in simplistic terms, our bank account was
Mm-hmm.
held at Department of State.
Okay.
And so once that money was transferred from Congress to Department of State, it would then get transferred to USAID.
Okay.
So it was kind of a little bit of a kind of triangle
S-
there.
So Congress still transfers X amount of money to Department of State, yes, but now Department of State, due to the Doge initiatives, has said none of that money now is going to USAID. Is that the way to look at it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the bulk of the programming, I think over 90% of the programming that they were doing, the contracts have
Hmm.
been canceled.
Okay.
And there's nuances to that. Once contracts are signed, there's legal issues there. Once money has been transferred to the people who are implementing the contract, it's very difficult to then get that money back.
Yeah.
And so there's a whole lot of legality that is going on to be able to figure out how that's all going to
So
happen
what
and
is
how
that?
that's going to.
Yeah.
So what does that look like now? 90% of contracts, maybe does that translate to 90% of the work, or but what's the implication worldwide? What are people feeling in other countries? Like, how bad is this, basically? Can you put it in perspective for us?
So, I mean, the 90% of contracts, it doesn't always equate to how much work was being done. And I think that's also a challenge of, it's not always a 1-to-1 ratio.
Okay.
But with 90% of the contracts gone, I would say more than that of the work is gone. If you look into some of the reports that have come out, there's a court case, I think that's still pending about how the U.S. government has caused deaths overseas, and so we've seen where people who were part of clinical trials that the U.S. was implementing and funding through this foreign assistance were literally cut off that day. So there are people with medical devices implanted that have no way of having them removed, know what to do with them. People who were on treatment, on oxygen, on antiretrovirals, cannot get refills. And so we are seeing there's deaths that are happening at the moment. Right now, because of the programs being shut down, getting hard numbers on the number of deaths and number of people impacted is challenging. There's projections, but it's hard to say specifically how many people, have lost their life. If you look at HIV alone, about 20 million people have lost access to treatment. And that's about 500,000 children in that number.
That's, oh my gosh.
And
That's
so
staggering.
it's staggering. Yeah. One of the things USAID was responsible for was an activity called FuseNet, which was Famine Early Warning System. And so that was the global standard for how countries and how the global community could predict food security and potential famine with 8 months lead time, which that allows for people to step in, provide food aid, be able to understand what's going on, work with countries. That is now gone. So if you think about climate change and how many countries are facing the possibility of famine and not having enough crops to feed their people, there's implications there for lives and children.
Yeah.
And so these are things that we're going to have to rely on our other partners, our friends at UNAIDS, which also have lost funding, but that can do these studies and can really look at the impact. Enough has been dismantled that we don't have the ability anymore to be able to truly say what the actual impact is. And I think that was a strategic move.
That sounds planned, because we don't know. We don't know.
It's all hearsay.
And really, I think this when I was doing research into this, I found this really interesting, is that the private sector is really hurt by this as well.
Yes.
Like the US,
for sure.
USAID buys products and delivers them from farmers, and we're creating and expanding markets. It's part of this whole development, right?
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up, because people do not talk about that enough. Yeah.
No. I think the farming community in the U.S. was heavily hit. The amount of food aid that we not only are legally required to do, but USAID was bound by the Buy America. And so if there is, if there's anything that can be bought within America and sent overseas, that is where we are to do it. We have to jump through a lot of legal hoops to go against that. So if you look at the food aid, if you look at the drugs, and if you look at all of those commodities, those were all Buy America First. And so the farmers have been heavily hit. Some drug manufacturers have been hit because they're not, they don't have the contracts anymore to be able to provide, the malaria bed nets, the, antiretrovirals, condoms. I think the United States, there was one manufacturer left. If this information, I know this was one of the things we would talk about, there was one manufacturer left within the United States that USAID would get their condoms from. And basically they were their only contract. And so, there goes another, business potentially.
Yeah, because they can't. Oh my gosh. So it's so mind-boggling to think why would they do this? I mean, we can guess.
There's conjecture.
I'd like to hear some conjecture. You feel comfortable sharing some?
There's conjecture. I think there's, this is all coming from my personal thing. None of this is any other person's beliefs, but I think there's definitely some understanding of backdoor relationships that may have been negative and so had created this unfortunate outcome. I think if you look at certain individuals and their background and how USAID was involved in democracy and governance programs in their home countries,
I see.
That did not bode in their family's favor, that has left a bad taste in their mouths, and that put a target on the back. There's lots of rumors of other relationships of people that felt that their personal and political backgrounds were not supported by USAID, and so that put a target on its back.
Follow the money. Follow the money.
Yes.
Yeah.
And,
who's been negatively impacted? Because it's not the children of the world.
No.
It's big business. It's and actually, even is it big business? Because now their private sector is being affected, right?
It is. It's being affected.
Powerful people. It's certain powerful people that are probably. Anyway, I should stay out of the politics.
Well, no, and if you also look, part of what USAID did was a lot of economic development. And so they would work with private sectors within the countries that they were in to work on building up the companies within those countries to help make them viable, not just within their own country, but regionally, and really help to build a lot more of global markets. And so the more that we focus on building up other countries' economic sustainability, means they have to rely on us less. And we don't have the same influence or power over them.
Yeah.
They can act on their own. And so there's a component there as well.
But people that are probably objecting to this don't want us there. Right? Like they it's this America first, and yet what you're saying is that some people do want us there indefinitely because it's in their economic interest. And just the illegal migration too. Like if you want to start addressing illegal migration, like you're going to get less people immigrating to the U.S. if the conditions in their own country are good.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
They'll want to stay there. If there's jobs and education and opportunity, more
I mean,
people want
who
to
wants to
stay where their
leave?
family is.
Who wants to
Yeah.
leave their home, right? Like
Nobody.
Yeah.
nobody. It's not
Yeah.
a fun activity, but when they're
No.
sort of forced to, and yeah,
It's not safe. It's not stable.
safe,
There's no economic
yeah.
prospects. Like at the very, let alone, this higher, living standard. Like you're talking basic safety and security is what USAID is trying to promote in the world, and
Yeah.
largely successfully in the past 50 years. Is it 50 more than 50 years? 50,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. That's part of why USAID focused on the building blocks that it did, working on education so that people can get to school, working specifically with mothers and daughters, making sure that there's opportunities for them to get to school, that, things as simple as understanding their cycle so they don't get pregnant at a young age and are able to go to school. Providing or like showing how schools could have nurseries so that the girls can continue to go to school and still have their children with them if they need. And, providing feminine hygiene products. Like something as simple as that keeps girls out of school because they can't go to school if they don't have something as simple as a pad.
Yeah.
And those are just basics of life that if those are
the
provided,
very basics. Yeah.
If those are provided and people feel supported, girls feel supported, and mothers feel supported, and the fathers understand why it's important for their girls to go to school.
Yep.
Just that alone
Yeah.
can make such a huge impact that may not be seen for a while, but will be seen.
Yeah.
And will allow the country to grow and develop and get so much further instead of keeping people down.
Gee, Lisa, sounds awful lot like a matriarchy to me.
Yes.
You take care of women and children and people thrive? Huh. Didn't think of that.
Shocking.
Shocking. Yes. So going back to the impact of what Doge has done, there are numbers that are floating around in terms of how many deaths have already occurred because of the loss of funds, loss of programs. Would you feel comfortable giving a guess on that?
I'm trying to think of the last ones that I saw. I hesitate to really go into numbers because I think it changes every single day.
Yeah.
But I do feel confident in that, the 200 million not having access to treatment and I actually think the 500,000 for children is probably low. USAID did a lot of work with orphans and vulnerable children that reached way more than that alone in a year. And so I think that would be, that's a low estimate if you ask me. I think there's different estimates depending on the areas in which you're looking at. So if you're looking at things like famine, food security, you'll see numbers that impact those, and you'll see numbers based on the health. Now, those I haven't seen where the data's been cleaned to take out duplicates. Until I get like something that I feel confident in, I will kind of shy away from giving those numbers. But I know that
but it's bad.
It is bad. I mean, you're looking at a minimum of like 1 million people, I would say, at
that
this
have
point.
already died because.
And that's just from malaria, TB, HIV.
Yeah.
And so doesn't take into account other areas that could be.
And for every person that dies, there's also people around them affected by that loss. Children who don't have a parent or or, a family that needs, one of their main supporters are now gone. And so it just ripples out. And I think it's very hard for us to wrap our brain around that, but that's, it's,
You're looking at, somebody in everybody's family getting affected in some way, which is hard for the average American to really understand. And that's why I think looking at it from people's experience with COVID and how so many people were impacted. If they weren't directly, they knew somebody who was. I think it's kind of those levels and that understanding and kind of thinking of that perspective one way or another. I think we're looking at huge losses. I think one of the other pieces is that a lot of the data, a lot of the documentation, a lot of the lessons learned have been destroyed. And so even coming...
It's just not on the websites anymore, isn't that right?
Yeah, it was pulled down. It was pulled down. And so if it's decided to bring any of this programming back, we're going to be doing a lot of backtracking and a lot of trying to remember where we were and trying to find that documentation and trying to...
So short-sighted. It's just so short-sighted to do this. It's really it's harming our own country as well as the rest of the world.
Absolutely. Yes.
An interesting, like you mentioned COVID, one real success story for USAID is the containment of the Zika virus outbreak in South America, right? That could have been really catastrophic, but you tell us about how that
I was actually involved in meetings around that. I was working with the Latin American Bureau at the time that was going on, and we were working with not only our country offices to understand what was going on the ground and providing support to the governments, because containing it within the country is ideal, but knowing that viruses transport, we want to make sure that we're working with neighboring countries. So really doing that collaborative approach. But then from the American perspective, we were also working with FEMA and getting prepared for if it were to cross into our borders, ensuring that FEMA had what they needed and the information that they needed so that they could immediately hit the ground and be ready to go. And so that it wouldn't spread as far as,
and that kind of did happen, right? Wasn't there a few people that did fly over and they identified them and it was contained before this was a massive outbreak? And
exactly. And it was part of that coordination that, between USAID, the Pan American Health Organization, FEMA, all of those, bringing those stakeholders together to be able to coordinate across borders. And that's, one of the other benefits of USAID is because they are, or were a global actor, they had all the relationships and were able to quickly pull people to the table and be able to have strategic phone calls with the right people to get the responses done quickly. And that is a critical piece that is going to be difficult to replicate without them.
For sure. Having that network that already built, and to rebuild it at some point is going to be expensive and a lot of time.
And we've been talking a lot about the programs and the influence around the world. One thing that bears a little conversation is the American workers. They, like you, Tara, you've put yourself for a whole career helping people in some of the most difficult places on earth. These are often war-torn, famine-stricken, unstable countries, and our U.S. personnel has been, dedicated their life, and this is not lucrative, right?
No.
USAID workers. No. God bless them. They are not going into this for the rock star status and money.
No.
And then when it's cut, I've been hearing just these horror stories of, at the very least, families are trying to plan. Things are just shut, right? Families are trying to plan so the kids aren't, disrupted in the school year. And like kids were just pulled out of school, not knowing where they're going. But it's more than that, even because this is not like super well paid, right? And people are going from country to country. They often don't have a home in the United States. Like they're facing homelessness. Like
Yes.
It's essentially veterans that are coming home to nothing.
Yes. And that's, back, it was early February when over 10,000 USAID employees were put on administrative leave. They didn't know, the ones that were overseas didn't know if they were to pack up their families. And at one point it was said that they were going to be coming home that week, that you're on administrative leave, you're coming home on Friday. But there was nobody there to coordinate sending them home.
Oh my
and
gosh.
Kids are in school and spouses have jobs and you're putting an entire family in turmoil. So you've got that component of the Americans. You've also got the component that USAID operates very differently than Department of State does, in that the bulk of their in-country staff are actually local hires. They're very concerted, and this is part of the sustainability of what they do, is they don't want Americans to come in, do everything, and then leave, and there's nobody to hand it over to. And so you'll get where offices, generally the high leadership, will be the Americans, but then everybody, all of the technical subject matter experts are all from the local country, and they're all PhDs, masters, they're now sitting at home. They don't know, their entire family relies on them for their income. Now they don't know what they're doing. Plus, all of the places that they would work are now getting shut down because the contracts are canceled. So you've lost that component.
Ripple effect.
Yeah.
But as you said, when Americans came home, there's a high cost of bringing them home because it's last minute, it's entire families, it's all of their stuff, everything.
Wow.
But they're coming home to places that they may never have actually lived. The thing with USAID is they're in it for the mission. They want to be overseas. They want to be working in the countries.
Yeah.
I remember the people I worked with, the last place they wanted to work was in the U.S. because they were so passionate about the work that they did. They wanted to be in it.
Yeah.
And so many of them didn't have homes, so immediately had to go to a hotel. You're sent to your home of record, which is whatever state or you're from. So
where
you're
you
not
lived when you were 22 when you graduated from college, because
your
then
parents
you took this
probably
amazing
lived
job.
to get your mail, right? And now you're kind of put there. And what do? You don't know if you're going to have a job. If you're not, are you supposed to look for a new job? Your entire field has been dismantled. So even if you were to find another job in democracy work or health work, all of those partners now have lost all of their contracts, don't have funding, or they're trying to rebuild and they're not hiring. So you've got all of these people who, and I'll speak to myself and my friends. I think over 60% I saw still don't have jobs, are actively looking, but still don't have jobs. And the people I do know that have gotten jobs have not been in the Washington, D.C. area. They've had to go to other states. They've had to move because there aren't any jobs in this area anymore. And it's trying to rebuild your career that you've spent decades, and rebrand yourself into a private sector person, and understanding that language, which is foreign to all of us, and understanding what's this? and just really trying to rebuild yourself, when you should be kind of, starting to think about your next life steps,
Yeah.
and it's been really challenging for people.
So, Tara, what would you like people to know? Like the average person, I didn't know much about USAID until, I knew that this existed, but it was just done, right? I didn't
Mhm.
think about it. I had the luxury of not thinking about it. But what do you wish people knew or understood about the program, the people, about USAID and the significance of what's happening right now?
I think from the USAID perspective, I would love people to really understand that USAID was working to create a stable, resilient, educated, and peaceful world. They were working to use the technical expertise of America to build that across the globe. I think
Yes.
one of the things that usually resonates with people is that USAID was from the American people. Department of State is for the American people. USAID is from the American people.
Mm.
And so it's a way for USAID to really bring those gems to other
Mm.
countries and really showing how countries can grow and develop themselves and giving them those tools to eventually
Yeah.
be doing it on their own. That was always the goal. The goal of any good development professional is to work yourself out of a job.
Yeah.
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 And that is what USAID was trying to do in a responsible way. And unfortunately, it was not, at this point, was not given that chance. It was working towards it, but it was not. I think when it comes to the people, I have never worked with such a dedicated and passionate group of people in my life. To work at USAID, they only accept 1% of the people who apply,
Oh, wow.
and minimum requirements for entry-level positions were a master's. So you're working with people who not only are masters, they're PhDs, they're doctors, who are committed to the mission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That, they're not doing it for a job, they're doing it for the purpose and the meaning behind it. And that is really rare to get across an entire organization, that they would rather work in war-torn areas because they know they're improving the lives of people
Yeah.
rather than a paycheck.
Yeah.
And honestly, any government employee, if you think that they are making the money, you can go online and search up anybody's name and see what their salaries were. It's
Right.
all public information, and you'll probably be surprised.
Yeah.
They are not
And a
making
little
a lot.
sad, maybe a little
It's
sad.
it's very sad, actually. It's been billed that they make so much money, and they don't. Sure, housing is provided, but most people don't want to live in the countries that they're sent to. Getting housing paid for to live and bring your entire family with you is not the be all end all.
Right.
It's not living in an American condo.
Right.
One thing to just kind of tie up what you said is U.S. aid workers are the people that run towards the problem.
Yes.
Yes.
They're the fixers. They're the ones who, it's a lot harder to build than it is to destroy, and I think we're seeing that play out right now.
And you see, they're the first ones in when there's an earthquake. They're the first ones in when there's a tsunami.
Yeah.
They're the first ones in when there's a disease outbreak. They're the ones, USAID had a whole structure for putting together teams like that. You could get a phone call and you'd be on a plane within 24 hours to go to said site. And you would be coordinating the response and working with a team of experts to get aid, whatever that aid was, to, the earthquake in Haiti, the tsunami in Japan, there were all of the different things that happen, and they were the first people in. and were the reason where so many people were able to live after those tragedies. And that no longer exists.
Yeah. You must have some incredible stories.
I think so.
I've seen a lot.
Maybe
I have some
a book
stories.
in your future?
Yeah.
I have some stories.
So tell us, what does the matriarchy mean to you?
Oh, it means a lot. It's actually, I've been mulling this over for a while, and I think it's not only women empowerment and women leadership, but it's also finding our feminine strength.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked in a number of places with a number of people, and I have found that the successful female leaders really embrace that feminine strength. And I think there's a potential for women in leadership to feel that they need to take on masculine traits.
Mm.
And I actually think, there's a place for that.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that we bring to the table are those softer pieces. And I think when I've been in leadership, or if I've been had an opportunity to provide support to people, I've been more effective when I've been able to really channel that feminine energy and be true
That's
to myself and who I am, and provide that empathy and provide that support, which I feel like many women feel like they need to hide if they want to get ahead. And that is what's ingrained in us. But I think we're entering a new era where we can really start channeling that and really lean into it and really demonstrate how important it is. And so to me, that's what it is really embracing that and showing your leadership through your feminine and your motherly, your maternal side, and really just leaning into it. I've had way more success with that than trying to lean into any of the so-called masculine traits.
Yeah.
So I think it's important. It's really important.
Yeah. Thank you. I agree, by the way. Thank you for that.
That's
that was
a
very
wonderful.
well said.
Yeah, we don't talk about strength and women very often.
Yeah.
So it's a wonderful perspective. And the whole work of your career and USAID really speaks to matriarchy to me.
It does.
Empowering people.
It does. It does. There's a real understanding that women and children are the backbone of many cultures, of many communities. And if you don't take care of those women, you're not going to get as far. You can get someplace, but you're not going to get as far and in a sustainable way if you don't bring the women up, if you don't lift them up to be important. There's many, many stories of countries that were in turmoil, and it wasn't until they brought the women to the table in the communities that they were able to shift the conflict. Liberia is one of them, that it was because of the female role models and the matriarchies within the countries that they were able to shift where the conflicts were. And I think those are really important stories to look at and lessons learned to look at. Yeah,
that feels like a podcast.
I was going to say, Tara, I think we need to have you on again.
I think so.
Be happy to.
I want to hear more of these stories about women around the world that you've seen firsthand. And but I know we don't have time today, but
I think women in conflict is just a interesting area to look at, and how the role of women has been instrumental in shifting conversations away from conflict and towards resolution. But that's a whole nother part of my background.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think we should
we've
consider
only
this.
we've only scratched the surface.
Have a part two.
Yeah.
Be happy to.
Okay.
All right.
I'm in.
Yeah. Same. Careful what you wish for.
Exactly.
Well, Tara, thank you so much for your time. This has been so informative, and it's such important work that for some reason is being well, it's not for some reason, it's power and money and influence, but it's been deliberately misinformation, disinformation, and I appreciate not only your career, but you're bringing like a perspective to like our broader audience to just even a little bit understand the work that goes into this and the people on all sides.
To give a little plug real quick, two of my former colleagues, two absolutely amazing women that are just phenomenal in everything that they've ever done, actually started an organization in the aftermath of all of this. It's a completely volunteer organization. They don't get paid. But part of what they wanted to do was to ensure that not all of the organizations that we worked with overseas kind of fall apart and that programming can still reach children and women. And so that was really important to them to try and salvage what they could. And so they started a volunteer organization called crisisinCare.org. And they have been really active in raising money through, they did a comedy special. They've been doing happy hours. They've been really active in getting their message out. They were just featured in, I think, the Washingtonian, and were on NBC News the other day. But they're completely volunteer and they just run on donations. So if any of the listeners are interested in any more work, it's run by Maury Mendenhall and Debbie Khalil, who were with USAID for close to 20 years. Go check out their website if you're inclined to donate anything you're interested in. I strongly encourage it. It's really moving to see how they've continued and are trying to continue to have the positive impact. It's really impressive.
That is wonderful.
We will definitely put that on our website. And I'm so glad that you said that because this has been such a heavy episode.
Yeah.
We like to leave with some bit of hope. And so the fact that you said that, I'm like, well, of course it stands to reason that two women started the career, service, started this. So yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Tara, and thank you to your friends. We definitely want to look more into that.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to talk about this.
Yeah, thank you.
Most people kind of have moved on and aren't thinking about it. So thank you for taking the time. It's really important.
It is.
Thank you. Thank you, Tara.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Dang.
I know. That was...
It's a lot. It's a lot.
It's a lot. I'm so happy she came on. I feel better informed. I think it's even bigger than I thought it was. I guess I knew, but hearing like some more details about it just makes just like how harsh this is, and it just immediately makes me think about, like, does our government care about us? Does our government care about people? Because not only do they rip this funding, these activities away from people overseas, which is, to me, that's enough of a problem. But then, all the things we talked about keeping Americans safer, about, in all the different ways, but then also the mistreatment of the employees, American employees. Yeah. It's kind of hard to wrap your brain around that that they just, okay, you're done. Like, that's it.
The cruelty.
It's the cruelty.
Astonishing.
It is. Yeah. It's astonishing.
I'm glad we have this platform that we can talk about this.
Yeah.
As I think that no one's thinking, even if you're thinking about USAID, you're not thinking about the USAID worker probably coming home to facing homelessness, like literally facing homelessness, because these people don't earn a lot of money. The cost of living is so expensive in Washington, D.C. that when they're brought back, like, it's sad on so many levels.
Yeah.
It is head scratching because it benefits people around the world, but USAID is not charity. This is not a charity organization. This is an arm of our safety and security and diplomacy.
Right. Yes.
So
100%. And, and I was thinking about it when she was talking too. I'm like, I think for the average US citizen, it feels very far away to them, right? Like all of this. But just think about when you do want to travel the world. And it kind of brought me back to my trip to Egypt back in the 90s. And we did go off the beaten track. We didn't take a typical tour, but we kept saying to ourselves, but we're US citizens and people will respect our country, so they will respect us to a certain amount which guarantees our safety to a certain extent. And I feel like my experience there was indeed that. Even as a woman in Egypt,
yeah,
which they do not have equal rights there, or they didn't. I don't think people understand how it impacts them personally
yeah,
when they're traveling overseas for pleasure or business. We want to have these kind of
exactly.
relationships,
And it's more
so
than relationships, Lisa, because when you gut US aid, you are also gutting the services for Americans overseas. So
true,
if there's an earthquake, you
true.
still need to you need to help in, say, Haiti, right? The Haiti earthquake. You also need to get American citizens out. You
Yeah,
know, it's the health and medicine, and we'll put on our website like the bullet points of what USAID
yeah,
does.
yeah.
We'll probably make a cute social media graphic for it too, so
Sure.
people
Yeah, let's do
understand
that.
the
Let's do
like
that.
what they do. Any American citizen who lives overseas should be supportive of US aid because your
Yeah,
very life can depend on this.
yeah.
Absolutely. Things can change in a minute. So it's more than this is life or death. This is,
For all of us, for everybody. I mean, everyone's impacted, and
yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad she came on, and I'm sorry that she, has to be dealing with this on a personal level. But I appreciate hearing her story, and I think we should have her back because I want to hear more. I want to hear some
I
more
do want to
stories.
hear
I
more.
think it'd be very interesting to hear some of her personal stories, experiences.
Yeah, maybe she could come on
So
with her friends that are continuing the work as well. It's so important. This is a calling for people, and to
yeah,
just end it so abruptly in such a difficult manner
yeah,
that hurts not only your own family, but the very people that you're trying to help and the very programs that you're working on. I can imagine that I'm grateful for people who are trying to continue this work, even on their own.
yeah. Me too. Oh, all right.
Well,
Well, it's been a year.
it's like January 9th.
I mean, the whole year.
That's when we're recording
I
it,
mean, the
but I
whole
know.
year. The whole
It's,
1 year of
I think
the new administration. We haven't even finished a year yet, Kath. So hang on.
it feels like a year, like not even 2 weeks
For
into
the
this
last,
new
yeah, the
year,
last
too.
9 days. Oh my
But I
gosh.
think it's important to keep having these conversations so that, we want to create a better world,
Yeah,
right? And the values of USAID are completely in line with at least how I view a matriarchy, right? Which is elevating women and children and the most vulnerable. And that's how you build a stable, sustainable world. And these are American values. These are literal American values that we're working so hard to spread, like the true seeds of caring and democracy and American goodwill
yeah,
all over the world. So it's such a short-sighted. It's really it's so sad. It just saddens me. But
yeah,
anyway.
yeah. It's all about the money. All about the money, short term. So
Well, it's
money,
interesting.
money ain't gonna get you the long term. That's for sure. Not in this
Well,
swing.
that's
So
right. It's not you can threaten and you can use your strength and your power to
yeah,
dominate, but that's not lasting.
no,
No, that's winning a battle, not winning a war.
yep,
And you know, the US, we really depend on this kind of diplomacy. Um, we leaving aside the politics, I got thoughts, but I'm not going to share them. But it's follow the money is all I'll say. Follow the money. And I think you will find
and
the
I'm about
real
ready to say
reasons
something
why.
else, but I'm going to keep my mouth shut. Follow the money and follow the criminality. No, I didn't
Honestly.
say who. I didn't say who.
Yeah,
but
and the political maneuvers, who's being investigated.
yes.
Maybe we'll have to
So-
do a little short.
Hey, we should be investigative podcasters. Can we be, you know how like they have true crime, but we would be like true crime. We could be like, I don't know, like, I don't know. I'll have to like work that one out. That could be kind of fun. Every once in a while, do a podcast where we like investigate
Connect
something
the
and
dots.
show all the clues and connect the dots.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I think that's what we've been trying to do though, is show the bigger picture and show like put this in context. Because you just hear about, like, I just think, oh gosh, those poor people in Africa are going to suffer. I don't really think about, which is bad enough, but I don't think about the whole context of even my own family, how this fits in to our safety and security around the world in a very concrete way.
Yeah.
I just think that's just been lost in the whole conversation.
Yeah.
So USAID saves lives.
Yes, it does.
I
We
stand
need it
by
back. We need it back. We need to get a administration in place in the future to bring it back. And let's hope that we all hang on till it happens.
Well, stick with
it's that
us.
kind of week,
We're in it
okay,
together.
guys? It's that kind of week.
And we're in it together.
We're
We're
in it
building
together,
joint community,
so,
even on the
yeah.
difficult ones. So,
So,
well, thank you
all right.
everyone for being with us. We appreciate your time as always. Please share this episode. If you're listening to us on like Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening to us, give us a 5-star review if you feel like we deserve it. If you don't, that's okay. Don't worry about it.
But we'd love to see some more 5 stars out there. That helps elevate our podcast so other people find it on these platforms. So that would be a great little Happy New Year gift for us if you wanted to do that.
So thank you so much and welcome to the Matriarchy.
Welcome to our community.